Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Evan Freiberger, and today we're going to be talking about this guy right here. This is our first look here on satellite of our developing low pressure system that's eventually going to be ejecting into the United States, bringing snow chances, not only for the Ohio Valley, but some signals are starting to pop up that a southern snowstorm could potentially be possible. We're going to be going over all the facts on that, telling you everything that we can know and everything that we can't. Also, we got a little bit of a clipper system over here near Iowa that's going to be bringing some small snow amounts across the Ohio Valley up into the northeast. And then behind this big old storm that's going to be coming in, bringing some severe weather chances to the southeast, we actually already have a risk down there, a slight risk. We're going to be watching out for that pretty cold air to come in on the backside of it. So let's go ahead and break all of that down right now. All right, looking at our 500 millibar height anomalies, or essentially where our areas of low and high pressure is currently, you can see that the future models that were indicating that these high pressure systems would be setting up over near Greenland and another one over here near Alaska has set up. That cooler air is already starting to pull down here into Canada. And then there's our low pressure system just off of the west coast. It's going to be diving down into the United States and eventually pulling up into the Texas Southern Plains region. And we're going to be watching this thing. Most likely, most of the models do agree. I mean, we're only 84 hours at this point away from the storm getting started. And most models agree that it's going to come up and bring some icing, also snow, and potential for some sleet up into the Ohio Valley. And then it's going to eventually track all the way through out to the east coast of the United States, also bringing some snow chances for northern Virginia and southern Pennsylvania. So no doubt Canada is also going to be playing a role here, as yes, these high pressure systems are going to be working together to bring some of that cooler air, but it's going to be bringing cooler air already over an environment that is kind of primed to keep that air cool. Really, all it's going to take is that low pressure system to come through the United States. As you can see, starting to see some of those cold air and that warm air start to mix here, and that is indicative of that low pressure system slowly moving throughout the country. And then right behind it, you can see that we're going to be getting some pretty cold temperatures behind this, anywhere from single digits across the Ohio Valley and potentially even colder as that kind of traverses the country and tries to make it down further into the southeast. One of our coldest day on the models here is the 9th. And if we come over to our wind chills, we can really get a feeling on just how cold this is actually going to feel. Across northern Missouri, going into Illinois, Indiana, parts of Kentucky, and southern Ohio, we could easily be seeing some negative degree temperatures with that wind chill factored in as we go into the night. This will probably be one of the colder days in the future here. And as one thing I've been noticing, though, on the GFS at least, is that not as cold as some of the models were indicating there in the southeast. You know, we had some chances of seeing some negative temperatures down there, but going all the way through today, all the way into the 9th, you can see that even with the wind chill, looks like models have kind of backed off of that colder scenario, which is pretty typical. We have been getting a cold bias, and it seems like the closer and closer we get to these events, the more the atmosphere warms up on the models. And then eventually, we're going to be watching further down the line for maybe some more cold intrusions, but nothing really much bigger than what's going to happen on the 9th. And this is going to be setting the stage. The first little cold plunge that we have in the United States at around the 3rd going into the 4th, that is going to set the stage, bringing some of the cooler temperatures down into the Ozarks, Central Plains, and then also the Ohio Valley for that snowstorm that's going to be coming through, bringing significant amounts of snow. I also found this pretty cool thing on the ensembles, which essentially is about 50 model runs. And typically what the ensembles do is takes all of these model runs and then it averages them out, essentially meaning it smushes them all together and creates the average picture of what you can expect. And as you can see, there's about 50 model runs here. And as I go through each one of them, you can see that we have some pretty consistent signals of this snow band that's going to be coming through the Ohio Valley. You can see some higher amounts in some of these scenarios, a little bit lower amounts in some of them, but overall, most of these models are bringing that big strip of snow all the way through northern Missouri, going into parts of the Ohio Valley. Also, some of the members here are indicating a little bit further to the north, a little bit further to the south, showing that we don't have a 100% guaranteed track on this storm yet. But if we go through every single one of them, you can really tell that we have a lot of consistency on the models here of where the snowstorm is going to happen. Every now and then we'll find a little model run that brings it down further to the south, but overall, you can see the consistency is really building for this storm up to the north. Now coming over here to our estimated timing for the first snowstorm. Again, we have two snowstorms to kind of look after. First one's going to be up here, and then maybe potentially a southern one after that, after those cooler temperatures start to work their way down into the southeast. But we're going to have this little clipper system bring some scant amount of snow over here in the eastern Ohio Valley as we go into the third. And then eventually, as we go into the fourth, GFS is indicating we're already going to be seeing this thing start to spin up here in parts of Kansas, eventually transitioning into a lot of freezing rain and sleet with some snow on the northern side. Now, I will say that this is the most sleet we've been seeing on some of the models. It's kind of a new feature. We were looking at this a couple days ago, and it was mainly just freezing rain, icing, and snow. And now we're getting a new little variable in the picture here. Quite the expansive region here of sleet being possible. But nonetheless, the snow still transitions on the northern side as we go into the early morning on the 5th. And you can really see we're going to be starting to see a lot of heavier snow. The main areas that are probably going to be getting the heaviest snow is over here, either in St. Louis or just north of St. Louis, north of Evansville, south of Springfield, Quincy, north of Kansas City, also pulling up into parts of Kansas as well. Hayes, Great Bend, Dodge City, you can see a decent amount of snow out of this. Kearney, Grand Island, and Lincoln is going to get in on some of that snow. Further down to the south, we're going to be watching out for this region right here in the kind of purplish colors, north of Wichita, north of Springfield. We're going to be watching out for the chances for some significant ice problems, again, which can cause big issues when it comes to driving, wrecks, power outages. Although when it happens, it just feels like rain. Conditions can get downhill really fast as that rain freezes on contact on the surfaces out there. As I continue to push this further into the future at around 12 p.m. here, you can really see just how expansive this snow is going to be. I mean, we're still talking about snow all the way from Kansas through Illinois and Indiana, down into Kentucky, southern Ohio as well. We're talking areas like Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Springfield, Bloomington, Urbana, northern Missouri, Des Moines, maybe even getting in on some snowflakes there. And then we're seeing that icing start to move into southern Missouri, Illinois, and also parts of Kentucky are starting to get that icing pick up there as well. As I continue to push this forward in the time, as we get into 6 p.m. on the 5th, we are now starting to see snow all the way from Virginia through West Virginia, Ohio, including areas like Columbus, Indianapolis, and Indiana, Springfield, Bloomington, there in Illinois, Missouri, southern Iowa as well, are all getting in on a decent amount of snow. So it's going to be a pretty widespread event. And then as I push this forward, eventually as we go into 12 a.m., 3 a.m., we really start to see that snow move off to the east a little bit more. And that's when areas like southern Pennsylvania, potentially northern Ohio and Indiana are going to start to get their snowfall. Not going to be talking about too much in those areas, but enough potentially to build a snowman. I mean, we're also talking about areas like Maryland as well, Delaware, New Jersey, getting in on decent amount of snowfall there as well before the storm starts to dissipate. Now, a little interesting thing that's been popping up on the GFS for a while is we have another chance of a southern snowstorm after this. And we're going to be talking about that in just a second. But before we do, I want to go into a little bit more detail, at least of what the GFS is saying in terms of snowfall here. And as you can see, across the Ohio Valley and the Ozarks and the Central Plains, I mean, we could see a pretty significant snow event. We're talking in this green area, that is a foot of snow. A foot of snow all the way through here. Down in some of these more whitish, kind of reddish colors here, that is getting really close to 2 feet of snow there. So this is still, the GFS is still a little bit more bullish than some of the other models here, but it really goes to show that wherever that little middle part of this band goes, that's where we're going to be seeing the biggest amounts of snowfall. As of right now, we're talking on Chillicothe here in Missouri, getting that, Moberly, Effingham, also just to the south of Indianapolis near Dayton as well is where that heaviest snow is going to fall. Chillicothe, Columbus potentially getting up to a foot of snow. Morgantown and Romney as well. Even northern Virginia potentially getting in on anywhere from 4 to 6, maybe even 9 inches. 8 inches potentially over there near Washington. 7 inches over there near Baltimore. 6 inches here near Atlantic City, Dover, Georgetown, 6 to 7 inches possible there as well. So as you can see, a lot of folks that haven't gotten snow this year are potentially going to get it. And even with this first snowstorm, we could already start to see a dusting here in southern Kentucky going into Tennessee. So don't completely rule out the chances for some snowflakes, especially after this thing comes through. And on the backside, might get some snowflakes and a little bit of snow accumulation. But of course, that is just one model. We got to look at all of them in order to kind of get you a better picture. As we come over to the Euro, as we move throughout this event, you can see we've actually had a little bit of a downtrend on the Euro. We're talking 8 to 9 inches potentially there near Missouri, also going into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, parts of West Virginia, 7 to 9 inches there in northern Virginia, and then 10 inches potentially over there in Delaware. When we're looking at this deterministic model run, which is just one model run, as you saw on our Ensemble model runs, we had a bunch of different scenarios, some with a lot more snow than this, some with a lot less. It's going to be the same on the GFS as well. But overall, we are starting to lock in here on a location of where the snow is going to fall. We're really never going to know just how much snow is going to fall for every individual city, but I think expecting, especially if you live in this pink area, anywhere from 1 to 2 feet is what you should be doing. So whatever preparations you need to make for that, you should already start to be thinking about that, as we are only about 3 to 5 days away from this thing scraping across the country. Now, in terms of the icing, we've actually had a little bit of an uptrend here on the GFS, and this is concerning. Again, all of this accumulates on the tree branches. The tree branches fall, they fall on the power lines, and that knocks out the power. And you also get some of this freezing rain, freeze on the road surfaces that can cause wrecks, big pileups, because, the inertia going into ice, if you hit those brakes, you're not going to stop. You're going to keep going. If there's a car in front of you, or if there's a truck behind you that's also hitting the brakes, it can get nasty really quick. So I really suggest anybody that I call out here, just don't drive. Don't drive. If you're a company and you're sending trucks out there, you're an idiot. Then you should be sued. Do not send trucks through these areas. But as I look at the map here, we're talking about areas like Appleton City, potentially getting a half an inch to almost an inch of ice. That's bad. Near Lori, Warsaw, also Lebanon, talking about a half an inch to or 3/4 of an inch, which is bad, folks. That is bad. St. Roberts to Roland, not as bad, but still half an inch is going to be enough to cause some significant issues, especially along 44 there. Sherrill, Salem, Viburnum, anywhere from 1/3 of an inch all the way up to a half an inch. Also, another little bullseye here pulling up near Ironton, Farmington, Fredericktown, potentially up to an inch of icing there. Coming into Illinois, we're talking about another strip here north of Carbondale, going over 64 and 24 here of another 3/4 of an inch there. And then also going into Indiana, same thing. Parts of Kentucky, same thing. We got to really watch out for this near Maysville, Frankfort. There's a lot of windy roads and mountainous regions out here, and it can get dicey pretty quickly. We're also talking about some icing possible over here in West Virginia as well, and then also north of Lewisburg, moving into parts of Virginia too. So, as you can see, we have a large area where we really got to be watching out for those icing conditions and dangerous driving conditions, and also potentially some power outages. So not only are we going to see the potential for some significant impacts for the snowfall out in the northern region, but further to the south, this ice could really be a problem. But after this storm, we are watching for the potential of yet another storm to fire. This was going to start actually over here near the Gulf of Mexico. And remember, after that first storm comes through, we're going to be getting a lot of cooler air working in behind it. Most of the eastern portion of the United States is going to be below freezing. There's not going to be a whole lot of changes to that forecast. So if this low pressure system does form, the chances of us getting some snow down into the southeast and the southern plains here, areas like Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the chances of seeing some snow is actually pretty high if we can actually get this low pressure system to form, and some model agreement is coming together for this storm. Now, this exact scenario here is just kind of an example of what could happen if a snowstorm does form down here. And as you can see, we're going to have moisture. And on the northern side of that moisture, there's going to be snow. So let's go ahead and bring this back. Let's say, hypothetically, this forms further to the south. The moisture doesn't make it all the way up to the north. The freezing line is still generally going to be pretty close to the same area. So we're talking about maybe a thinner strip of snow on the northern side and just more rain on the southern side, maybe some more freezing precip down there as well. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the perfect scenario here that if you live in like northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, also going up into like eastern United States here, talking about Columbia, going into North Carolina, the chance is there. But I do want to point out, folks, that this is almost 10 days out. We're about 8 to 9 days out from this actually happening. One of the things, here's like my overall opinion on this, and then we're going to go look at the Ensemble members and see if there's any agreement, whether or not the snow is actually going to fall and accumulate. But I do think having enough cold air to transition any type of storms, rain, and moisture into snow will be present. I think that is high confidence. Now, whether or not we get a low pressure system and where exactly it tracks, it could track a little bit further to the north, a little bit further to the south. That is low confidence. We just do not have a lot of confidence about that. So I wouldn't get overly excited just yet. But boy, if we see a low pressure system form down here, that's when we're going to get excited. If we see the models agree on that, that is when we're going to get excited. All right, now here is our Euro Ensemble spread here. And we're just going to be looking at mainly about 10 days out and seeing if we can see any consistent snow signals down here to kind of form a percentage or a chance of whether or not this is actually going to happen down here. So first model looks like there is a dusting down there. Second model, not so much. Third model, not so much. Fourth model, not so much. Fifth model, nope. Sixth model, that's interesting. That is definitely an outlier there. So yeah, I mean, 10 days out, you can see there's a lot of inconsistency here, and no real, spread of models here that are really indicating a consistent signal for that storm to form. Okay, here's one that kind of shows the same scenario here as the GFS here, but that's 1 out of 15 there. 1 out of 15. Well, there was one, so we'll say like kind of 2 out of 15. This one's kind of like the GFS, but it looks like there's just not a whole lot of snow up there to the north. More rain with that one. And there's another little signal for some snow there. Not so much there. Not so much there. Not so. Oh, okay. So here's another one. So that's 3 out of 23. Yeah. I mean, going through these, the more I see, the less confident you get here. Okay. So we still have a lot of high uncertainty. You can see a lot of these different scenarios here are completely different from each other, but there are a couple. It looks like we're probably going to be around 4 or 5 out of 50, which would put about a 10% chance of that storm happening. So should you be taking it seriously? No. Should you be ringing the alarm bells saying, no, Southeast is about to shut down, or really taking this storm seriously at all? Not really. I mean, we only have, there's a couple more members there. There's about 7 out of 50. Yeah, so we're about 7 out of 50. Okay, so yeah, not a big chance at all, but definitely something to watch out for. I mean, the cold air is going to be there. If we can get a low pressure system, maybe the GFS is onto something. We will see these chances change over time. We will see these Ensemble members start to, say the more consistent values all the way across the board here as we move from the 240 hours out from now down to the 5 days out from now. So as you can see, when we're in the 5-day range, it changes. We get a lot of consistency on that northern snowstorm, but this one out here is just too far out. And when we click on all these different model runs, it just jumps around everywhere. And that is a great example on how to tell whether or not a snow event is certain or not. I do want to say though, just because something seems uncertain doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So don't lose all hope just yet. I'm not. I live in northern Alabama, and I'm still hoping that eventually we'll see some flakes. The last thing I want to talk about is we've actually had a little bit of an uptick here in our chances for severe weather. As you can see, we're starting to see a little bit more of that instability rise a little bit further to the north. We're still talking about some pretty weak storm food. This wouldn't be a buffet for a storm by any means. This would be like if the storm was overseas fighting, getting military rations. It's just not a whole lot of food. Technically, it's enough to keep the storm going, which is all it needs, and potentially to cause some severe weather. Looking for the spin in the atmosphere, you can see we have plenty moving up to the north and east, and even though the storm food is going to be pretty low, again, the shear kind of acts like Ozempic for these storms, allowing them to exist, spin, and potentially produce tornadoes, a lot less food. And we do have pretty decent shear environment, so I'm still thinking that severe weather is going to be possible, and it looks like now we are getting a little bit more of a confirmation from the SPC as well. As you can see, we do now have a slight risk for severe weather out there. That is going to include parts of Texas, going through Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Alabama, Tennessee, and southern Arkansas. About areas like Shreveport, Pine Bluff, Little Rock, Memphis, Jackson, and everywhere in between. I really do think all risks are going to be possible. I think further up north is going to be more of a damaging wind risk, and then further down south it's going to be more of a tornado risk. But I mean, you could get tornadoes along any of these parts of these areas areas. Where they all kind of line up is kind of in this region here. So maybe a 5% for tornadoes there, and then a 2% on the southern and northern side of this. Kind of the same areas that we were talking about with that last storm. I don't think it's going to be as impactful, as we're going to have a lot less instability, but it's going to be something we're going to have to watch out for as we go into the future. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another winter weather update. We'll have another one out tomorrow, but before we go, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you do and end up enjoying this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.